talking about how you're gonna implement those solutions. You know, that's always, the devil's always in the details, of course, as we all know. But that's, you know, I like to think, and I think Tim will tell you that, I like to think I've never encountered a transportation problem I couldn't solve. And I worked all over the state. And this one's a challenge. I'm not gonna, you know, put icing on it and decorate the cake real pretty. It's a challenge. And, but I think working together and communicating together, making sure the communication is two-way, especially from our side, is the best strategy moving forward, that we can tell y'all, this is what we're gonna do, this is how we're gonna do it, this is what the result of it's gonna be.
Thus far, this is the best shot. This is the best.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, man.
Other than he's already checking.
Right, yeah, we typically about twice a year go out and mow and clean up around the gates and keep them cleaned up, and we'll check them periodically. We do more extensive cleaning of them about twice a year.
It doesn't include the one that's off of 64, that's between the Princeville area and the county maintains.
Yes, sir. We have some of them we don't do because they're county maintained, but ours we do about twice a year.
Is it possible that we could establish a crew in Princeville that you guys could train, so that in between your PIs, we can go out and make sure that that stuff is clean that same time?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
I fail safe in anything doesn't hurt.
Yeah, the more eyes we have on it, the better off we are, because, you know, Edgecombe County is a big county, and we have limited forces that we can stretch around it. You know, anything y'all can tell us that we need to go take care of, then that's great. And Ray, make sure and get his card so we can put into work.
Let me ask the citizens if they have any question that we may have missed.
Okay.
Anybody have any question that we missed? Yes, sir.
My name is Lee Story, I'm assistant principal in Fairfield Development. What about the analysis with the Rocky Mountain flood situation? I read about this in analysis of them. They've been in the paper for several weeks about their gate situation. And every time a flood comes up, Rocky Mountain floodgate, and their hydraulic system, it becomes a problem.
Okay.
Of course, now the manager Cone, or I think the manager, he stayed there. Well, whomever it may be, I read all the articles on it. They said their flood, their gate hydraulic problem is not associated with it. None of the flooding. But very few people in Edgecombe County and parts of Nashville believe that. Every time a flood comes, there's problems with their dam, with their hydraulic system. It started in October and it still hasn't been fixed.
You're talking about the reservoir gates?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We got that inquiry last week, and one of Mr. Sprayberry's staff is looking into that to see if we can ascertain what the specific issues are. So we do have that on our list as a result of an inquiry from someone last week. So hopefully we'll be able to get some clarification on what's happening there.
Lee, the team here meets on a regular basis to, because there's information that Mike has that I don't have, like floodgates on a dam or reservoir.
I just studied it, you know.
Right.
You know, the internet's good too.
Yes, sir. But anything that, you know, is you see in the paper, or things like that you can feedback to us and let us kind of talk about it within our group, much better. You know, it helps us. And I'm an NC State graduate, so.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
You think if they fix those gates, it's gonna eliminate some of that flooding over in Long Pine? When the water go around the dike and feeds in on Long Pine first, before it feeds in on Princeville, you think if you fix those gates, it'll eliminate some of that?
You're talking about the water that comes over Shallow Landing?
The 64 bypass going around 33, right, going across 33, that settlement over there. So we floods out before Princeville floods out because that water feeding around the dike.
Around the end of the dike.
Right.
We're aware of that. I mean, we know that's a phenomenon that happens every time that you get a significant amount of rainfall. So that's something that the study will educate us on relative to any solutions, whether it's extended or, do something different. But we'll be able to share that in the fall when we come back, or maybe the interim update in the next few months, Mayor Pro Tem. But be glad to, we're gonna look at that. And the staff and all the hydraulics engineers in Raleigh, they're all very cognizant and aware of that fact that happens. So, thank you for that. Commission, look forward to the journey.
She has one more.
The one in the corner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you were talking about the study off 64, that area up in there where the gates are not, where there are no gates.
Yes, ma'am.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
How fast, what was the time frame on fixing that?
We'll have them done by August.
Good, because that's where I live.
Well, you
And I'm
point out
ready to
your
get back
house-
home.
yeah. You point out your house to this guy right over here.
Okay, I
Make sure
would,
that's
well,
clear first.
I'm afraid that flood took it away. It's a clean lot now,
Okay.
but I'm ready to get back home.
Okay, great.
Thank
Last
you.
one back in the corner, Ms. Wilson.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Doing all this work that y'all gonna try to do, will Princeville still be classified as being in the X zone? And not really get, well, they said way down the line, will it ever go into that AE zone? And will all the work that y'all talking about getting done, will, like I said, will Princeville be still classified as being in the X zone? And if it stays in the X zone, and that you all do what y'all say y'all gonna do, will those houses and things in Princeville still have to be raised?
So the study is gonna tell us some answers about what zone it'll end up being. So, it'd be premature for me to tell you what we think it's gonna be. We have to get the data first, but you're right to be tracking that. And so that's
But I
very.
want to stay in the X zone.
Right.
There'd probably be a little more to be analyzed before that answer can be given to you, so we don't have an answer tonight, but part of what we're doing is gonna contribute to getting a better way of describing that delineation. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
So to put the studies in context, as Mike said, the Corps of Engineers provided their study in late 15, early 16. And their study identified 4 or 5 changes that could reduce the flooding in Princeville. Their study did not go into the details of the floodplain analysis that is necessary before work is started. They did a feasibility study, but they stopped there. And so what we have now is and you and we are together on it, we have the feasibility study from the Corps, and one of the items they identified that would be helpful in their opinion in reducing flooding was putting gates on the culvert. So we're lifting out of their feasibility study that piece of their recommendation and undertaking a process to do the floodplain analysis, because that wasn't done by the Corps of Engineers. And so we have to do that work in order to be sure we know the full consequences, positive and negatively, of making such an improvement. Now, the Corps had a number of other recommendations that I'm sure you all saw. What we are going to do also in the context of trying to address the multiple projects is we're going to recommend to the governor that $1.4 million be included in the upcoming state budget. Now, the $1.4 million is the state's share of a $4 million cost to design all of those other improvements that the Corps study identified last couple of years. And so the design work on those other elements like raising the levees and extending the levee is a $4 million cost. And as part of that design work, they will have to do the flood impact analysis on each of those elements, just like DOT is going to do on the gates. And so as part of our commitment to you, we're supporting the capital cost to do the gates if we can assure that it's positive and not negative. And we're also going to recommend to the governor that we urge the state and the federal government to move ahead on the design for the whole package of recommendations that came out of the Corps' study. So that's our approach on the flooding and the repairs or modifications to the river and the levees in the area. The whole study, the whole package that the Corps developed is about a $21.5 million project, as they have said to us. But the first thing that has to be done is $4 million to do the design of those improvements. And so we're recommending that the state offer to put up the $1.4 million and formally request the Corps and federal government to appropriate the remainder and commence the design work on all of those. And so that way we hope we can move various parts of the study forward. So we'll transition over to the discussions we've had about new land opportunities, new development sites. We've talked with you all about the possibility of acquiring land adjacent to the town in the Shallow Farm, US 64 area. And the town board has communicated with us your official desire to move together in a partnership to do that. We're committed to finding $650,000 to pursue the long-term planning and development of that land for the town's future development. The maps we have show that the land is outside Hurricane Matthew's flood footprint. It got wet during Floyd. We think a modest amount, which we can plan for to accommodate the potential if a Floyd storm returns. So the amount of water was not too overwhelming when we looked at what Floyd's impact was on the land. So we're committing to do that. We have funds identified in a federal grant that the state has been given. So we've got the funds identified in that grant, and now we're waiting for HUD to give final approval for that grant. It covers a number of other programs throughout the 50-county area, but we have included the $650,000 in that package. We're hopeful that we will receive affirmative support from HUD by June 23. That's the target, and they are expected to give us their approval. And we don't have a reason to believe they will deny that request. And the $650,000 would include funds for acquisition of the land, some initial planning for a site of that size, which would require doing some master planning, some subdivision planning to identify how to utilize the site. And according to your letter, you want to proceed as a first phase to build your community facilities at that location, which would be a major way to anchor that site for the future of the town and have a good presence as people come through the area, as well as hopefully begin to drop in and visit. So we are including the funding for the acquisition and planning and some initial infrastructure, which there will need to be some initial infrastructure in doing the first work of building the public facilities. We will need to work with you on all of those elements. Our goal would be identifying how all those steps can be taken and funding them, and having an agreement between the town and the state in the summer as to how the town will go forward in developing those plans so that everyone will be assured that those improvements will come along in the near future. So we think we're able to make this commitment to you, subject to the federal approval of our overall package. And continuing in that chain of thought, I'd like to introduce Gavin Smith, who I didn't introduce earlier, but I will do it now. Gavin is a part of our recovery team who is working on planning both near-term and long-term for 6 of the most significantly hit communities in the area, including Princeville. And I think Gavin would like to review with you his thoughts on moving forward in some of these development activities.
Before Gavin comes, can I ask you a quick question? Also, in the statement of moving our services to the higher ground, we also talked about whether or not we would be able to retain the existing buildings. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
We've been researching that, so Mike has been trying to answer that.
So Joe's around here somewhere that can, not this Joe, but that Joe. And so, but anyway, the way that it works is if, you know, you're going to move a building, you want to get a buyout for it.
No buyout.
No buyout. And so if you're just gonna have insurance, right, and you're gonna file for insurance, that's your building. Right, Joe?
That is correct.
Then there's no issue. So the only thing that we saw that I could see that might be an issue would be the fire department. And it's my understanding that there's not been a decision made on as to whether or not that fire department building will be owned by the fire department as a nonprofit or as a municipality infrastructure. So once that decision is made, I can give you a more specific answer on that. But with the other buildings,
Yeah. With the other buildings, as long as, because you're not participating in the buyout, again, these are your buildings. The reason we talked about the fire department, because there was a letter of interest that was turned in by the town to participate in the hazard mitigation buyout for that. But that hasn't occurred yet, so that's up to y'all, you know, at any time. But if you did participate in the buyout, of course, the building would have to be demolished and there would have to be free space in that area. And that's, you know, that's it. But the other buildings, you know, you've got historical structures, you got a lot of history there that probably needs protecting, and we need to, you know, focus on each scenario, because each scenario is going to be unique.
Madam Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem, so one of the things that kind of gets me about this is that also, say if you turn in a project worksheet for public assistance for one of those buildings, in addition to cover what the insurance didn't cover, but you're not going to use it, say it was a senior center, you're not going to use it for a senior center anymore, then there could be a problem with that. And so we just need to track it very closely, because we don't want y'all to be, the building's not going to be demolished, you just could possibly not get paid for the project worksheet to repair it over and above the insurance that you got. Did I correctly state that?
That's correct, and there's also maintaining flood insurance and other issues as well. In every building, I think we need to sit down and have a conversation regarding every building and every facility.
So there's a clear understanding for each one, and there's no guesswork. And it's like you said, the historical significance of some of these buildings, we have to be very careful and be very deliberate on how we move forward with it.
Now, let me understand, you said that there was a mitigation for the fire station that was turned in?
Yeah, when I inquired this afternoon, our hazard mitigation branch manager did state that there was a letter of interest submitted for the fire station for the buyout. Now, that may have just been a placeholder or something like that, but there was one submitted for that. That's our understanding.
Could it have been from the chief?
I'm not sure, to be honest, okay? But we know that's your facility.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so Gavin, your turn. Mayor, Commissioners, good to see you again. Good to be back in town. We've been touching base with each other quite a bit. So, a couple thoughts. One is, and a lot of the issues that are been talked about today, and we've talked about this a couple times. So the things that we've committed to. One is to help you looking at the broader issue, how all these pieces are fitting together, can fit together through the development of a disaster recovery plan. And so we're committed to do that, coming up with the community's vision and a set of goals and strategies to achieve, the vision for your town, which includes also, very importantly, what Dempsey was just talking about, which is the idea of some part of the town moving to another location. And so one of the things that we're also working on that's a sub-part of this larger plan is undertaking, if you will, something akin to what we're calling a relocation strategy. So, and that sounds fairly simple, but it's really pretty complex when you start to think about the individual household and family members that are contemplating moving, because that's a fundamental issue. And in fact, we have a team that's coming in next Tuesday at 1 o'clock we've contracted with North Carolina State University College of Design, top-notch architects and landscape architects to come in and look at, and they'll be visually reviewing the town and looking at the housing stock that's here and capturing what you have. It's historical nature, the size of the housing types and so forth, so that we can use that information to inform what the needs are going to be when people are moving to this new site. So that will help inform us as to the different housing types. And the types that we would like to propose are those that capture the historic history of the town, what they look like, also energy efficiency, that are resilient, those that are energy efficient, those kinds of things that are very design specific. And we're putting a team together, we have put a team together that can help us do that. So they're coming in, they're going to be looking at all of the buildings in town to help inform that option. We're also going to be doing something akin to what we would call land suitability analysis, looking at that 50-acre parcel and looking at the nature of it, its elevation, where it is adjacent to the river and so forth, and using that to help inform the layout of an overall, at least a proposed new neighborhood. And of course, in order to do that, we'll need to be working closely with all of you and all of the town to say, what is it that you're interested in doing? And those architects are not only faculty from NC State, but I've asked them to personally reach out to people in this state and around the country that they consider top-notch design professionals that would come in and work with us, in essence, on a pro bono basis. We pay for them to come here, feed them, house them, and so forth. And there's a lot of interest because they want to come and help. And so that's something that we're working on. We've also contracted with a team, including another NC State graduate who I would consider one of the best in the country. He literally wrote the book on greenway design, and I know we've talked a little bit about this. The idea of how do you use, what will you do with the land, the houses that are being bought out? It's open space. The houses that choose to be bought out will be maintained as open space. And so you're going to have houses, parcels that are going to be vacant. And so how do you come up with a strategy as to what you want those parcels so it will be an amenity, as opposed to, sometimes if you don't do a thoughtful, planned out process, it's kind of this checkerboarding. You've got these vacant lots that end up becoming a hassle. You've got to mow them, and it's a problem. And so there are people that will be looking at what do you do with that land, whether it's community gardens, whether it's pocket parks, whether it's a greenway that maybe ties Shiloh Landing to your current town, to your new neighborhood. And how is that intertwined? How is that, how can that be done?
Historical points of interest.
Absolutely, and I know we talked about this everywhere from baptisms that are occurring
Yes.
to Shiloh Landing to the town in some of the historic buildings. So thinking about that and capturing the history and then using it as a vehicle for people that want to come in and learn more about the town's culture and history, yes. And in fact, on a related note, we're also looking at considering and thinking through these design professionals, looking at how they might be able to develop something akin to flood memorials that could commemorate what was lost, but also capture, the history. Maybe there's a memorial near the site of the historic baptisms that have been occurring in the town. That's just an example. So we're going to be working on that as well. And I should say that we're also going to be doing and talking with Dempsey is on that 50-acre parcel, so I don't want to lose sight of that. That's a big issue. It's basically coming up with something from the ground up. And so we're looking at doing this intensive design process. We're thinking it would be probably a week-long process, and we'll work with Dempsey in the governor's office and Mike and all of you to kind of lay that out in terms of the timing of it, so that we can have this team come in and they would, in essence, be in your town for at least a week. It's a very intensive design process. And that process could be used to, based on public input, come up with a strategy as to what you want that new neighborhood to look like. And that in turn could inform what Dempsey was referring to, the idea of ultimately bidding out a firm that would actually help to build, the design that it's been developed in partnership with all of you. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and we're certainly committed to do that over the next year, possibly two. So we'll be visiting more and more frequently. I don't know if you have any questions of me on those topical areas. We'll be here next Tuesday. Look forward to seeing you again.
You volunteered to do this.
Yeah, we got some ideas.
Sure, I bet you do. I bet you do.
We have two, I think Jay was going to come to you.
Yes, this new design, will you all take into consideration there will be those of us that will not be moving and make this new 50 acres contiguous with the old neighborhood?
Absolutely. I mean, that's right. It has to be, because then you don't want to have two separate neighborhoods. I mean, that's the idea. One way is through a greenway, but that's not gonna, unless you want to walk there. But there would be ways of connecting water, sewer, roads, sidewalks, streets, so forth. It would connect in a very purposeful, thoughtful way that would be based on your input. So there wouldn't be two separate places, because that's actually probably the exact opposite of what you want. You don't want to have these two towns as two separate places, but we're going to look at how would you integrate them? How would you keep them connected?
Is that the reason you were saying you do a study on the current housing that we already have?
That's right, that's an important part out, that's right, that's an important part of it, is it, so what is the history of and I have looked around at some of the houses that withstood Floyd, that are here prior to Floyd that stayed, and so what kind of housing stock was there, so that you might be able to capture the housing stock types when they're rebuilt, so there'll be a similarity, but also how they'll physically be connected through roads and greenways and sidewalks and other means.
Yeah, my question, also about this is, there's, when Hurricane Floyd came, 98% of the homes, original homes that was there was destroyed. If maybe 2 or 3 of the original homes is the only one that is left.
Right.
And I know one of them is my grandmama's home,
So
which
maybe
is
we can
the
even
original.
if that's okay, if we can
one.
take a look on Tuesday.
Sure.
That's what we're looking for, exactly that kind of thing.
Yeah. And as far as to have it as a historic, I know it was built like in 1800s.
Right.
And so, like they went in, they changed it, they had to put the siding up there, but like on the inside, I think some of the original ceilings, it's covered, with stuff like that, but.
Like
the
a beadboard or the.
It was like shellac, it was real,
Right.
some of the original stuff is still just covered up, and I was wondering, as far as being historical Princeville, who do I have to see to make it a historic home, and what avenues would we have to go in
Well,
order to do that?
it's interesting you said that, because one of the things we're doing before our Tuesday meeting, we're going to meet with Edgecombe County Community College, and there is an expert at Edgecombe County that is an expert in historic preservation. And so we're partnering with them, and they know that we're working with all of you, and so that's maybe a connection that we could explore. But if I can talk with you maybe offline, I could get your address, and we could stop by, because we want to physically, we'll be taking photographs, so you'll see a large team. There'll be about 25 people coming in on Tuesday, photographing, looking at the town, looking at the layout, because also, it's not just the physical houses, but it's also the human settlement, the nature of your community. There are things that we can learn there and perhaps apply, at least in proposed ideas in the new neighborhood, that make them show some similarities. And in fact, capturing the older housing stock could help inform future investments should monies come down to build new housing stock throughout eastern North Carolina. That's also a long-term goal for this project.
Okay.
I think the one thing I would say as a follow-up to Gavin's report is that he's laying out a great deal of work for everyone, including the town, you. I mean, we're coming to you with a package of proposals, hopefully will be suitable to you, but they also involve your taking leadership and providing guidance to Gavin's team as to where you want this town to go. So it's going to be a busy summer with everything that's being teed up. The last submittal we've got is Ryan Flynn, my associate in the governor's office, is going to present a project that we're working on to bring a team to Princeville to do a number of community improvement items. So Ryan?
So on May 1st, we submitted a federal grant application for an NCCC team. NCCC is National Civilian Community Corps. They are 1/3 of the nationwide AmeriCorps team or organization, and they're fully federally funded. So they're going to work for 8 straight months in 4-week chunks, and Princeville is the part of the first identified project for this group. So they can do anything from community cleanup to rehab of buildings to fixing vegetation in the box culverts, anything that we can think of that's of the highest priority to the town. So it'll be in collaboration with Dr. Smith's team, with the town board, with us to identify the projects that are most useful to the town, whatever we think is going to be the best possible use of their time. It's 12 volunteers. They work a minimum of 40 hours each per week, and they can do pretty much anything. Apparently they're very highly skilled, and so we're looking forward to that. The timeline for that, they should be able to start in August of this year.
So if there are community properties that you want to see a group like this work on, if there are cemeteries that need maintenance attention, that I've heard may need some attention.
We thought that would be on top of the list.
But it would be, we think we'll get the project, like some other things we've talked about today. We still got to wait for a final approval, but we're pretty sure we'll get this one. So one of the things y'all may want to think about over the next month or two are the types of projects you'd like to see included in that work. And so we think that will be part of
I wonder if I could just add just a bit, and Commissioner Bullock, I haven't forgotten another conversation about the baptismal sites, and so one of the options that we've explored with this group is that, for example, building flood memorials.